Hello and welcome for the first time. It should be welcome back. We tried this previously, but this should be the official first episode of the IceMac MMA Podcast. I am Jackson McCarty, joined.
I'm Alex Eisman. It's great to be here, and yes, we did attempt to record our first official episode of this podcast last week. Ran into some issues in production.
We ran into like 30 different issues. None of that ever worked out well for it. But here we are, right? And we didn't miss much of anything of note from that last card.
No, not at all. All that matters is that we got it held down for what I think could be the biggest card of the year. Unless, of course, John Jones fights in December. But as of now, this to me is undoubtedly the biggest card of the year.
And Jones popping up is the ultimate trump card. Like, there's nothing that really tops that. But at this point, I think that's March. So if everything else stands, I think we are starting on literally the peak of the mountain with this podcast in relation to what the cards are, which is a grand time. But Alex, I know the story. The people who are listening do not. How did this podcast initially come about and get started?
Yeah, so Jackson and I worked together at the same TV station in Cheyenne, Wyoming. I started my job about probably 5 weeks ago now at this point, right?
Close to 5 weeks.
And the first day, we went on a little road trip out to the University of Wyoming in Laramie. And, we're just kind of talking to each other, just getting a feel for, like, each other as people and, how we'll work together and stuff like that. And not as much on the way there, but on the drive back, we just MMA came up and just like that.
Off to the races.
It was off to the races. And
it's weird because I've seen plenty of people come into the station at this point, and you never know if you're going to find common ground with anybody, which usually with the sports guys, you've got a little bit more to rely on there. But both of the last two sports guys I worked with, neither one were particularly interested in MMA. So I don't remember who brought it up on which end of that, but as soon as the wires crossed there, I was like, oh, wait a second. Because, that's been a big part of, especially recent sports history for myself because of, the pandemic and everything. There's not a whole lot of people that I know that like to talk about it as much. So that, it kind of worked out to get a couple mics in front of us and talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting to me because I think in the last several years, especially since Conor, MMA has become a little more mainstream. Yes. But I still wouldn't consider it a mainstream sport when you have, NBA, NFL, NHL, MLB, all that stuff. Those still, I feel like, are more followed than MMA is.
Oh, absolutely. And it's super weird because, the UFC has the huge ESPN deal, and they were the only ones running during the pandemic. And, you have these bigger than life stars, but you're not really getting that same appeal. So it's all very curious to me why it's not considered. I would think that it's a bigger deal than hockey at this point, maybe bigger than baseball. I know baseball has its lineage and, the history behind that. But just in pure where it's at in sports rankings, I think it's really a number 3 that gets treated like, 6th or 7th.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, it's obviously a very violent sport.
Yes.
So that inherently is just going to turn some people off. But I mean, everyone loves football. Football is also a very violent sport. It's not necessarily as raw as two guys in trunks beating each other up in a cage.
Yeah, but look at what just happened to Tua.
Seriously.
And we're not an NFL pod by any means.
No.
But, you see terrible stuff like that all the time. It's a weird disconnect. And I think a lot of people see it as the more savage version of boxing. Yeah. But that's starting to go away and you're getting more, actual artistic views on it. So hopefully we get to grow this podcast as the UFC continues to grow. But how did you find yourself becoming an MMA fan? What was the start of that journey for you?
Yeah, so this is a very unique first MMA experience. Back in 2018, December of 2018, I was visiting my uncle in Orange County, California.
Okay.
And when he was there, he was working for Mazda, but previously he'd worked for Harley Davidson, which were marketing partners with the UFC. So he did business with Dana, and
he didn't work at the Condom Depot by chance, did he? It was Harley?
It was Harley, yeah. It was Harley. Okay, man. Yeah. But
that was good.
I am so sick of this guy. So you made me lose my train of thought. But
okay,
I was in Inglewood, and there was a UFC card that was moved there from Vegas actually, and never really watched it before. Knew a couple, the big names. You knew the Conor McGregors and the John Joneses and stuff like that. But I was a very novice. And I knew probably 3 or 4 fighters off the top of my head.
Right, you knew people were just going to get their heads kicked in, and that was the extent of it.
That's all I knew was going to happen for that. But so I got there, and the guy headlining the card was one of the fighters that I knew because it was UFC 232 when John Jones fought Alexander Gustafsson for the second time. And so that had me pretty excited because it was someone I knew. I knew he was one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. You can argue that with, several other people, but I think he's undoubtedly the greatest light heavyweight of all time.
Yeah.
So it was cool to see him, but the entire card, Jackson, was loaded. It was loaded. So obviously Jones Gustafsson, Amanda Nunes won her second belt in the UFC against Chris Cyborg.
Yep.
That was crazy.
I'm about to say, to be there live for both of those is absurd. It sucks that it wasn't Jones Gustafsson won, but obviously you had plenty to make up for it in that case.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, Amanda Nunes, I don't think there's any disputing that she is the greatest she's the greatest female fighter of all time.
Yeah.
I don't think
that's pretty untouched.
It's not even close.
No. Which it is kind of in its infancy in the big stage, so maybe somebody soon enough will try to come bolster that. But as of now, she is the undisputed 1A of women's MMA.
Absolutely. And on top of that, 2 other champions, one current, one former, fought on that card. One of them is the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter right now, Alexander Volkanovski. I watched him knock out Chad Mendes in that fight. Okay. And that was a little before his title reign, but that's
where it was building.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He was still a couple fights away from fighting Max the first time. And on the undercard was Piotr Jan, who, I mean,
we'll get to talk about him later.
Yeah, I know we will. I'm excited, but it was, and I mean, I didn't know anything about Piotr Jan at that time because this is, 4 years ago now? Yeah. Jan didn't win the belt until 2021.
I believe it was 20, but I might be. I am so bad with years.
Yeah.
Like, what was it when you had that argument about when John Jones's last fight was?
Yeah.
And I thought it was like 2 years before when it actually was. Just how fast the sport moves, it messes with my brain.
But still, to see the crop of talent that was on that card for your first UFC experience was unbelievable. And I mean, Dana came over too. I said hi to him for probably 10, 15 seconds, which was cool. But also, one of my favorite things from that experience was I got to sit next to one of my favorite musical artists, Schoolboy Q. And he was the man. Like,
your uncle set you up, right?
He did. I mean, he is the sole reason why I got into UFC because of that experience. It was so much fun, and I mean, it for a first time UFC like exposure, I feel like it's impossible to top.
Oh yeah, and my story will not come anywhere near that, I promise. Because literally my whole thing was I was at a Buffalo Wild Wings with my father. There was like, I think this was the undercard because I don't remember it being particularly stacked out, and it was while Cody Garbrandt was still trying to make his name, but. He was fighting Thomas Almeida, who was undefeated at the time. Thought Almeida was going to absolutely crush him just based on records. It was, I think Cody had 2 or 3 losses at that point, and I was like, oh, well, this should be easy for this Almeida guy. I don't know. I ended up sitting there watching that fight so intensely, couldn't get my eyes off the screen. My dad had to actively like, hey, dude, order your food, because I was just so zoned out. I was just like, I'm watching this right now. And that kind of started it. And then it kind of gradually built. And then I really went full bore into it during the Conor Khabib stuff, which I think was a huge, jumping on point for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
And since then, it just continues to grow and grow and grow. And then obviously you get those little instances that renew it, like you get certain different rivalries. Like the Max versus Volk stuff was big in just kind of reminding me why I love the sport. And then obviously, again, during the pandemic, the UFC taking over and really just having a full grasp on sports throughout the entirety of it. It just, all that just kind of kept building and building and building to where now, like, I can miss a couple cards every now and again, but it's not very often.
No.
And I'm a weekend worker. Like, I'm sitting at my desk with these fights on my phone, like, as I'm trying to get stuff done, which is probably not the best thing in the world for me to be doing. But, hey, look, you got to do it, right?
It only happens once a week, man. That's how I feel. But enough about us.
Yes.
We're here for one reason, and that is UFC 280. And so we've selected a couple of the prelim fights that both of us are pretty excited about.
4 in total, I believe.
Four,
right?
Yes. We got 4 of the prelim fights to talk about, and obviously we'll go through every fight on the main card because this is such a momentous lineup of fighters.
There's not, like, getting it down to 4, because we had 5 initially before the one got canceled.
Yeah.
But, like, we were about to go through a full 10 fights and that's of just the notable guys. There's plenty of other guys who could have been worth a mention.
Yeah.
But 9 was about as slim as we could cut it.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be hefty, but we hope that you all kind of, give us some feedback on, because we have a lot of differing opinions on a lot of these fights too. Which
we didn't really know one another's predictions until we came in here.
Yeah.
And then I busted out my list and kind of just gradually, as we were going over it before we started this, I was like, oh, I have this, this, and this. And he's like, oh, wait a second. Like, I think we've got like 2 or 3 that are the same.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But hey, that's the beauty of fighting, though, to be honest, is really you never know.
No, it's a one-punch game. It's a surprise arm bar in the clinch. Like, anything can flip a fight. But the one thing, we had mentioned how differing we are. We are the exact same, for what I understand, on this very first fight. So go ahead and set it up for me, Alex.
Yeah, so one of my favorite young up-and-coming fighters, I believe he's younger than both of us. We might have to check that.
I'm 21 years old.
I think he's 21. He might be 22. I don't know. Either
Here,
way,
while you set it up, I'll look it up.
Yeah, either way, this guy is early 20s, and he's undefeated, an absolute killer on the ground. I was actually watching an interview with him last night.
He is July 30th, 2000.
Wow.
So I am
he's
roughly a year and 1 month.
Yeah.
Give or
Still,
take.
that's
Yeah,
crazy.
that's absurd. For him to be worth mentioning in a, what is supposed to be one of the biggest cards, if not the biggest card of the year, that's absurd.
Yeah. But the fighter that we are talking about is Muhammad Mokaev.
Mm-hmm.
He has fought twice in the UFC, won both times. He's 8-0 overall. And, I mean, what is there to say about this guy? Like, he's just mauls everyone that he runs into. I don't know.
And it's set up perfect for him because Malcolm Gordon has like a bunch of KO TKO losses. So like it's not the strongest chin by any means.
No.
It's a guy who you don't really have a lot of stock in, so it's not bad if he loses for you. And Mokaev, he's been a demon to this point, both in his career in the UFC and otherwise. I'm going TKO, probably a little bit of a ground and pound situation because Gordon is dangerous on the feet. He has plenty of knockout victories as well. But I'm taking it TKO. I didn't put a round to this one. I guess I probably should have. But are you very much on that one?
I actually have Mokaev in a straight bet. I'm going to take him by submission just because that's his bread and butter. Okay. I know Gordon does have a couple sub wins on his record. He actually has 3 Kimuras, which I think is interesting.
Okay, I see. I didn't look at the trend. I saw that he had a couple, but I never paid attention to how he got it done.
Yeah, but Gordon is, he can get it done in several different ways, but I mean, when you're going up against a talent like Muhammad Mokaev, just so you all know, he is a minus 1,200 favorite in this fight. That is how heavy of a favorite. This might be like the biggest line that I've seen for a favorite ever. And it maybe Chimaev when he was supposed to fight Nate Diaz, but he's just insanely favored. So if you're betting on this, it's impossible to just take his money line because
you have to pick you're
going to make no money. So if I'm going with a straight bet, I'm going to take Mokaev by submission because that's what he does. That's his background. But if you're doing a parlay, I would suggest going with the double chance with the sub and points, which is minus 220, because obviously having the security of the fight going to a decision, which, I mean,
right,
that it just happens.
What's the over-under on round set for, too?
That I will have to look. I honestly wouldn't be... It probably is 1.5, to be honest. I'll take a quick look right here.
Yeah, and while you do that, and you can kind of reintroduce it, but I do want to go ahead and bring up the next fight we're going to be looking at, because this is one of the ones that we're a little bit split on. We've got Volkan Ozdemir versus Nikita Krylov, and this one, the reason I was kind of opposed to how you were looking at it, and the reason I found it easier to kind of go against you whenever we started talking about it a little bit more in depth, neither one of these guys are consistent at all.
No.
And with the weight that they fight at, like, we all know how these fights go at light heavy. Yeah. Like, it's just, all it takes is one big chunk of you, and the fight's over. So I do ultimately go with Nikita here.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't blame you for that, because Nikita, I mean, especially when he fought Gustafsson in his last fight, first round KO, maybe, was it under a minute? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it was in that 50 to minute 15 range. I don't remember exactly.
He looked great, but I don't know if I'm going to put as much stock in that, because Gustafsson was coming off of a 2-year layoff, and he might just be... Yeah. It just might be his time to go. Like, I don't know.
He did not look particularly seasoned in that fight. He looked rusty.
No, and he is fighting later this year, actually, so I guess we'll find out. I mean, we won't find out in time for Saturday, but we'll find out whether Gustafsson is done or not. But here's also, by the way, it's 1.5 is over.
Okay,
for the last fight. But this fight's interesting because these guys have 4 common opponents, but I really count it as 3 because one of their common opponents was Paul Craig, and you can never take stock in a Paul Craig fight.
No.
But just because Ozdemir beat him, I watched the fight, and it's not like Ozdemir looked great. He basically just stood on his feet while Paul Craig sat on the ground and tried to invite him into grappling with him, which was smart. It was smart by Ozdemir. Like, it was very smart victory. He took little damage. Yeah. He didn't take a lot of damage, which I do like going into this fight. Krylov lost to him by a triangle choke. Shocker, it's Paul Craig.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm about to say there's in other news the sky is blue.
Yeah.
It's
But they both did fight Ankalaev, who is gonna probably fight for the belt after Yuri and Glover, I would assume.
So they'll fight Yuri.
Yeah.
We'll get to talk about that, but
we'll get there later.
I'll go ahead and spoil that we're gonna be in agreement on that one.
They both lost to Ankalaev by UD. That's not shocking. He's one of the best fighters in the division. They did both fight OSP, and Krylov fought him twice.
Okay.
Split him. The first one he lost, but that was a long, long time ago. Keep in mind, Krylov has been in the UFC for a very long time.
Isn't he only like 30?
Yeah,
too? Like
he's younger.
He's one of those
Ozdemir.
absurd like young guys, but has been around forever.
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense to me.
He is. Ozdemir is older than him by 2 years, but Krylov is fight older by a mile, I would say.
Yeah, he's got a lot more seasoning to him. Another reason I was kind of drawn to it, 15 submission wins.
Yeah.
And Ozdemir is not a ground guy. No. So if he can, manage to kind of make him a little bit uncomfortable, because he got 12 TKO wins too, like, he's not a slouch on the ground, or standing up rather. So if he can just kind of make him uncomfortable there and get him into the waters, I think Krylov should win this kind of handedly. But again, neither one of these guys are consistent. You don't know what you're going to get from either one on any given night. So it's a very iffy. This is not one I would put money on.
No, but in a fight this close, I always like putting money on the underdog, just because whatever happens, you're going to get a better payout if it goes your way, and really what I think is a 50-50 matchup. But for Ozdemir's case, every fight of his UFC career has been against a top 10 opponent.
Yeah.
Granted, he is 6-5, which isn't great, but
he splits the field a lot.
That establishes him in kind of the second tier of light heavyweights, I would say. Maybe the third.
I'd probably go third.
Clearly outside the top 5. I think he's 8 right now.
Yeah, but that also implies that you think that the top 5 is in tier 1. I don't.
No, No,
I would say there's probably about 3 guys in tier. This is kind of a pointless argument, but I would say there's probably about 3 guys in tier 1, another like 4, and then he's tier 3.
Yeah, but Ozdemir, I think, has the advantage on the feet. He's a kickboxing background. He's got 12 KOs in his record. Mind you, that's with many less fights than Krylov.
Yes.
And I think Krylov is a guy who starts off fast. I mean, he's a killer. If he gets you early, you're done.
It's over.
But the thing that I like about Ozdemir is that he has never lost a fight in the first round.
Okay.
And I think the longer the fight goes, I do think Krylov would win the first round. But I think the longer the fight goes, the more Krylov is going to gas out, and Ozdemir will kind of do his thing. So I have him winning rounds 2 and 3. I'm going to take him on the yes. I am going to take him on the money line just because it's safe and he's plus money.
Right. Like you don't have to actually put any kind of prop on that.
But I think that it'll probably go to a decision with him winning the last 2 rounds.
I've got Krylov second round sub. I think I'm kind of following with you. The later it goes, the more it does favor Volkan. Krylov has, I believe, 1 total decision victory.
Yeah.
It's not something he likes to do very often, but I like a pretty dominant first round. Ozdemir maybe overcommits on a punch or something, and either Krylov catches him with one of them uppercuts, gets him on the ground, subs him, does something. I like the idea that he gets it done early-ish in the second.
Yeah, and I mean, that's completely understandable. We're both kind of on the same page with how we think the fight's generally going to go, but, it's just whether Krylov can get him out in the first round, I think is what it comes down to.
You've got about 7 minutes where it's your fight if you're Nikita Krylov.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it's Ozdemir's game.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. So go ahead and set us up. We've got 2 more on the undercard here. Go ahead and address the one you want to talk about next.
Yeah, so this is another fighter that I really like. I've watched him on the Contender Series. He's looked great. He's a good personality. Kyle Bohayo. He's super well-rounded. And, he's got wins by sub. He's got wins by KO. He's got good cardio. And he's fighting Makhmud Muradov, who lost his last fight to, no disrespect to this guy, but Gerald Meerschaert, who is, I wouldn't consider necessarily the cream of the crop of
He's a gatekeeper's gatekeeper.
Yeah. He's not the cream of the crop of the middleweight division. He'll definitely sneak up on you in a couple fights, but I think that loss is going to age very poorly for Muradov. He's also coming off a 14-month layoff since that fight, which I don't like. He is very much a striker, so if Bohayo gets him to the ground, I think it could be over fairly quick.
I think he needs to establish that tempo really fast on the ground, Bohayo. But yeah, I'm with you here. Muradov does not really inspire me very much. It feels like a way to build Bohayo and get some more eyes on him because this is going to be one of the most watched undercards of the year. Just somewhere like, hey, this is a guy you need to know, just FYI. And that's what it feels like to me. I've got him by a sub as well. I need to probably start predicting some more decisions, if I'm honest, because it's getting a little carried away early. But, give me Bohayo.
Yeah, and I have him as a sub. I have him in a double chance as well, sub and points, because I just like having the security of it going to the decision. But we both agree it's likely that he can finish it on the ground. He's fought twice this year, so he's fresh, and I just think he's going to go out and take care of business.
Yeah, and I really don't feel like that's one that we needed to mention because, again, people do need to know his name moving forward.
Absolutely.
But it's not one we have to spend a whole lot of time on, very similar to the Makhachev fight earlier. Yeah. It's just hey, remember this name, let's keep it moving. And that actually brings us to the last fight, the featured prelim here. We've got Bilal Muhammad and Sean Brady. This is one we differ on, but I want you to go ahead and lead it off because I know I'm going to be the bad guy here.
I know, and this one is going to be, I think it's going to be a very good fight. But here's...
Saying Bilal's going to be in a very good fight is an interesting
well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, because the thing, if you're not super familiar with Bilal Muhammad, he is generally known as a very boring fighter.
Yes.
He has 16 decision wins, so that kind of tells you all you need to know. But I will give him credit. He has found ways to win fights, but most of them have been against older guys, especially recently. Damian Maia, Vicente Luque, and Wonderboy are all definitely on the back end of their careers.
Yeah, but dude, I still take Vicente Luque over Sean Brady right now.
Really?
Yes.
I feel like Luque has just been struggling lately.
And I also love Wonder Boy. But, like, I know he would lose to Sean Brady right now if that fight got magically booked. I do think Luque is a very quality win, and he manhandled Luque.
Yeah, he did. He looked good. But, I mean, again, it's just like Bilal just, like, sits and holds you and just, and especially for a guy like Brady who is younger, he is a super talented submission grappler.
Yeah.
He's training under the Gracie family, which is, for those who don't know, a legendary Brazilian family.
They are the family of MMA.
Basically patented BJJ.
Yes.
Today, modern BJJ, I would say.
And really the UFC because of the Vale Tudo tournament. Like, I mean, they are the reason we are here today.
Right. So that's why I like Brady, because if Bilal tries to clinch with him, if Bilal tries to wrestle with him, I think Brady has the upper hand on the ground. I do.
I don't know about all that. So again, I do think the win over Luque is quality. I think Luque is a currently better fighter. He's not better on the ground than Brady is, but he is a very good fighter, in my opinion.
He is.
And as boring as he is, and I don't particularly like Bilal because he's got a way about him that doesn't really resonate with me whenever he's not winning fights in a convincing fashion or a very fashionable fashion. But I do think that he can get Brady to the ground and kind of just lay on top of him.
Yeah,
like he's not gonna wrestle him. He just needs to get top control and sit there, and that's something Bilal has made a career out of at this point. He's about to get himself Curtis Blades if he ain't careful by old Uncle Dana. But I do think that he wins this one by decision because that's all he knows.
Yeah.
And Sean Brady, I don't think he's got that same level of experience that Bilal does of going up against really talented guys that know how to kind of limit you at where you're best. And Bilal is the type that can limit some very strong fighters at what they're good at.
Yeah, and listen, it is completely possible that this is a classic Bilal Muhammad win. Yeah. I just think Brady brings a bit of a different skill set that Bilal hasn't necessarily seen in a little while. I mean, Damian Maia obviously is a BJJ guy, but Damian Maia is also very old. And Brady's fresher. He's undefeated. Obviously, that takes a lot of talent to do. He's 15-0. And I just think that he's going to stump Bilal on the ground. I think Bilal is going to try and take him, but I think Brady is going to show some moves that Bilal wasn't necessarily expecting. So this is a close fight. The betting lines suggest that it's going to be a very close fight. Sean Brady is the favorite at -146, which is not very much. But if you're trying to make a couple extra bucks, I would take a double chance again, subbing points, just to be safe, and that's -110.
Old double dip Eisman over here. Good Lord.
What can I say? Dude, they're my favorite. They're my favorite kind of bet. It's just so safe.
I think you're betting scared is what's happening.
No, I'm betting smart. I'm trying to make some money.
I don't know about all that.
But that's all that we got for the prelim card. Now we'll get down to the main card fight. And the main card fights, and the opener I think is super interesting because it's the number 1 ranked women's flyweight against probably the hottest prospect in women's flyweight right now. Katlyn Chookagian, number 1. Manon Fiorot is number 6, I believe.
You got to love those names. But number 6, I believe that's right.
And she's 4-0 in the UFC, 9-1 overall. She is a very talented fighter.
Oh yeah.
But Jackson, you are going against her, and I'll let you tell me why first.
So basically the reason I'm going in Katlyn's favor here is because she is an absolute decision machine. Very Bilal Muhammad, and you're going to see a trend because I really like these people. And as far as betting and feeling comfortable that they're going to win, that know how to just control a fight. Manon does not have that same level. She's got like a 67% finish rate, but the only loss she has on her career is by decision. What is Katlyn Chookagian's favorite thing to do? Go the full distance. I love that matchup for Caitlin. I think it, again, will be a boring one. And I'm not the type that, likes to sit here and make fun of, like, the women's fights and stuff, because we all know at least one of them that it's like, oh, you're watching the women's fights. No, you can have a lot of fun with it. I just don't think Caitlin Chookagian is a specifically fun fighter to watch. Very Bilal Muhammad. So, it's not one that I think a lot of us are going to be getting out of our seats for, but I do think Caitlin comes away with the win by decision. Go figure.
And again, I'm going against Jackson here. I'm gonna go with Manon, and I actually think Manon she's a bit more exciting than Caitlin is. She definitely has some power behind her punches, more so than Caitlin does. And I think that Manon being a southpaw is actually going to present some problems for Caitlin, because Caitlin's favorite combo is the jab and right low kick.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a tough combo to land on someone who is fighting in a southpaw stance.
Yeah, because it's not their lead leg anymore.
So I think that inherently is going to give Chookagian problems. And nothing against her. I know she's the number 1 ranked flyweight right now, but I really think that she should be number 3. Because
probably
she lost to Andrade, who's number 3 right now, I think.
Yeah.
Or 4.
That sounds right.
And just solely based on the way Tyler Santos fought against my girl, Valentina Shevchenko, which a lot of people thought she won that fight. Obviously, I'm a little biased towards Valentina.
You've still got the champ advantage.
Right.
Like, if you don't decisively beat the champ, you should not be the champ.
But Tyler gave her biggest challenge in flyweight, I would say, ever since she entered the UFC.
Yeah, how she didn't stay above Caitlin is beyond me.
Yeah. So I personally think Chookagian is the 3rd ranked, and 3 going against 6 looks a lot closer than 1 going against 6, I would say.
Yeah, it does.
But I think that Manon being southpaw is going to present problems for Caitlin. I think Manon has more power behind her punches. She'll probably land a little more damage. She is a karate black belt and an undefeated Muay Thai fighter. I bet you didn't know that.
They're all that, dude.
No.
Everybody's got a black belt. Everybody's got a world championship in Sambo or whatever it is. Like,
Chookagian's only, I believe, a purple in BJJ.
Oh.
I'm just saying.
But they're all so decorated at this point, and there's not any one true style anymore, that, like, everybody has these accolades outside of the octagon.
That's true, but the reason why I said that is because I think Manon has more ways to win this fight than Caitlin does. And if we're going in a parlay, she's a minus 225 money line.
Double dip.
No, I'm just, dude, I'm betting on like all of these. So I'm just trying to share my thought process, because if you're going to parlay, you want to take the money line minus 225. It's not worth it, because it's not worth putting money on if you're betting it straight.
No, it's not.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm giving a couple options.
Yeah.
And if I'm going straight, I will still take Manon by decision, because for the most part, I like to bet women's fights to go to a decision almost always, because you just see less knockouts on the women's side.
Well, just lower weights in general.
Yeah, exactly.
There's been a study across, I think the lowest finish rate is flyweight men.
Yeah.
Then the women fall into it because you don't have this much, mass going behind your throws. That's the natural state of the weight. Exactly.
So, what did you already say a bet for Caitlin or no?
I just did by decision.
Caitlin by decision. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
I'm not as the lines are fine. I might throw a couple on a couple of these, but I find more fun in betting on college football. And I don't like betting to influence how I watch MMA, which is a weird thing. I don't know why, but there's something about I don't like having a vested interest in a lot of these fighters. These main 3 fights, I will probably put money on. Yeah. But beyond that, I like just watching the fight to watch the fight.
Just to watch.
Right.
That's fair.
Other than the Michael Chandler future versus Dustin Poirier that I had set, which came from that drive. That was a good one. We'll talk about that when that fight happens. But I'll go ahead and set up this next one, because I think we've kind of worn that last one out a little bit. We've got Beneil Dariush making his return versus Mateusz Gamrot.
So, I like Beneil to win this one, because especially I thought Mateusz Gamrot lost his last fight to Arman Tsarukyan. I don't know. Did you watch that?
I believe so. But dude, again, I have to watch it at work.
Yeah.
So half the time, like if it's not, if it's not those top ones, it's hard.
I wasn't employed at the time, so I had plenty of free time on my hands.
You were just day drinking.
I was, yep. Well, it was night drinking. It was a fight night.
Okay, sorry, my bad.
So Gamrot fought Tsarukyan. I thought it was a unanimous decision, which shocked me. Split decision, and he gets the edge. I mean, split decisions are close, but the fact that all three judges thought that he won that fight was shocking for me, because I thought Arman dominated those first 2 rounds.
Yep.
The third round, I think, is the one that swung it in favor of Gamrot, because he won the last 2. He definitely had better cardio than Tsarukyan did, but I just thought Arman did enough in the first 3 to win that. So I am not as high on Gamrot. I think Dariush coming in on a 7-fight win streak. Obviously, he hasn't fought in a little bit.
It's been a while.
He's been injured. He was actually supposed to fight Islam a couple times, I think, right?
Yeah, they tried to book that 2 or 3 times.
But his last fight was unanimous decision over Tony Ferguson, which, Tony is kind of struggling right now. But that was 17 months ago, and I think the level of Tony Ferguson's game at that time and the level of Tony Ferguson's game right now is a lot different.
Oh, yeah. Like, even by the time Dariush got to him, it was not still Tony. And I think it would be better for the UFC if Dariush wins this one. Because they want him to fight Islam.
Right.
They want that style matchup. They want him to be at the top. I don't personally see it happening. Primarily because, like you said, he hasn't fought in a while.
Right.
Gamrot, even though that last decision was a little dicey, he's on fire.
He's
got a really nice run going for him. And something about that, how Beneil fights and the injury that he suffered doesn't really lend me to believe that he's going to be coming back in that same form, that same level. And like you said, the last guys we saw him fight probably weren't at the peak of what they're not who they used to be.
Yeah.
So I've got Gamrot by TKO.
Interesting.
Yes.
Because I would think that Beneil would have the edge on the feet.
Maybe. But all it takes is one.
It does.
All it takes is one. And especially if you're out of shape, you haven't fought in, 2 years now, year and a half, something crazy like that. And it's been a real lack of training as well. It's not just these guys who only fight once a year. You're a little bit more out of rhythm, and you don't quite have that same coordination that you normally do. Maybe you get slipped one.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, Gamrot definitely, he's got knockout power, but I think Beneil is just a more well-rounded fighter on the feet. If it goes to the ground, then I think Beneil's in trouble because Gamrot's a freak on the ground. Yeah.
He's a mauler.
But I think Beneil, if he gets to the ground, can do enough to at least hold him off and maybe just escape around and then get back on the feet. And
Beneil's not inept on the ground by any means.
No.
That's just the level that Gamrot is.
Yeah.
I think it'll be somewhat even on both ends there. I think they're very comparable fighters when they're both kind of at their peak.
Right.
But I don't know that Dariush coming into this is at his peak.
That's true. And that's what I'm banking on it, though. I'm banking on him being at his peak.
We've seen, what was it? Dom was out for 2 or 3 years, and he looked fine.
Yeah.
It just depends on who you are and how you do it.
But the thing that surprises me about this fight, I'm actually surprised that Beneil is the underdog in this one. I don't. Looking at the lines, before I even looked at the lines, I was like, oh, Beneil's probably going to be, minus 160, minus 170 favorite.
I had it basically a pick 'em.
Yeah, but he's actually a plus 162 underdog in this one. So that is super appealing for me because I just think Beneil is an all-around better. He has a more well-rounded game than Gamrot does.
Yeah.
And he's fought better competition than Gamrot has. Yeah. So I would have expected him to be the favorite. I'm pleasantly surprised to see that he is an underdog because that's what I'm going to be putting money on. He's plus 162. Bet the money line. Don't go crazy. Just Straight up, that's what I'm playing for that fight.
That's fair. And then, like I said already, I'm doing Gamrot TKO. Maybe catches him with one, it goes to the ground. It's a ground and pound. Drop a couple of elbows in there. Something simple. I can't bank personally that Dariush is going to be the same guy in the same form that we saw last. Okay, let's go ahead. We've got 3 more fights now, and these are the big ones, the ones that everybody will be watching the pay-per-view for, starting with Petr Yan versus maybe the most popular guy on the roster now in Sean O'Malley. Is that outrageous to say?
I don't think it's outrageous. I think Paddy Pimblett gives him a little bit of a run. But Paddy hasn't fought the competition that Sean has. But I think, God, I love Sean O'Malley. I think he's a great personality. I think he's funny. But I just think taking this fight is just a case of flying a little too close to the sun on this one, because Petr Yan is just a menace.
So here's my issue. I came into this fully ready to take Petr Yan.
No.
And the only reason that Sean would ever beat Petr Yan is because of how much longer he is. And Sean's whole game plan is keeping people at bay and doing all these crazy spin kick, random jumping off the cage backwards and whatevers. But I'm somewhat tempted to say it's Suga's fight.
Here's what I'm going to counter that assertion with. Petr Yan, before he lost to Sterling again, which I think that he won that fight. That was a split decision that I think Yan won rounds 3, 4, and 5. But that was, that's neither here nor there.
No.
Jan's fighting now.
Got to move on.
But before that, he fought someone with basically the same body type as Sean O'Malley when he fought Corey Sandhagen.
Sandhagen's not that same type of fighter. But no, I know what you're saying with the length.
But Corey Sandhagen throws a bunch of odd strikes too. He's, I
don't know. I don't like necessarily as well that. I don't think he.
I think Sean's more explosive.
Good. Yeah, he's definitely more explosive, and Sandy has a better ground basis than Sean does, so it's not the be-all, end-all to keep people at distance. Sean, that is the one thing he has to work on, is just making sure these people are as far enough to where he can just barely clip them, but they can't get anywhere near him. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, we saw Pedro Munoz start to poke holes in that.
Yeah.
Which is way alarming, because Pedro Munoz is not half the fighter that Petr Yan is.
No.
Which is why, ultimately, I do have to go Petr Yan's way here.
Yeah.
I'm going to go by decision. Because 3 rounds, I'm not just super...
Yeah, and Yan usually takes a little bit to kind of get going.
Yeah.
I think in a 3-round fight, though, he's just going to be forced to, he might take half of the first round to kind of feel out Sean, but I think in the second 2/30 of that first round, Jan's going to start kind of letting it fly. I'm going on a little bit of a deep dive on this bet that I have for Petr Yan.
Double up.
It's kind of a double up. Alternate round betting. I'm going to take Petr Yan in round 3 or by decision.
Okay.
Because Petr Yan
is
a slow starter, and I think the differential in his skills between him and O'Malley is big. So I think it's possible that he gets a finish, but I definitely don't see it happening in the first round, and I'll take my chances that it doesn't happen in the second either.
I think what we basically see is Yan concede the entirety of the first, use the second to close the gap, kind of get Sean on the ground, hold him down there, and then the third is when we see him really just set his full game plan on him and take it by UD.
Mm-hmm. And listen, like you said, Sean O'Malley was losing to Pedro Munoz before the eye poke. I think the second round he was starting to come back a little bit. I think he was kind of finding his rhythm. But the first round, I don't think anyone is disputing that Pedro Munoz won that round. And Sean O'Malley's one loss in the UFC was to Chito Vera, who is a top 5 bantamweight, and he's fighting number 1.
And that's also just a weird point of contention between everybody with, did he actually lose that Cheeto fight or was it an injury stoppage? If they rematch tomorrow, I think Cheeto beats him.
Yeah.
Because Cheeto has leveled up.
Oh, yeah.
Big time. I think he might be our next champion.
Really?
Yeah. If I had to put a future, to enter your realm of betting here for a second, if I had to put a future on who the next champion at that division will be, I would probably put it on Cheeto.
That is surprising because I think that as it stands right now, Petr Yan is the best fighter in the bantamweight division right now.
I think he probably is too, but I think Aljo, in my prediction, and we'll get to talk about it in literally half a second, but I think that Aljo beats Petr in a rematch. And then you can't give it to him again.
No.
You can't go for number 4. I think just stylistically, Cheeto offers a much better chance at beating Aljamain than what Petr does. He knows it at this point. Aljo knows what Petr is. He knows what he isn't.
Yes, but I think Petr, this is just from seeing it from my perspective. Petr obviously won that first Aljo fight before the illegal knee.
Correct.
And, yes, the second one was close. To me, I think Petr did enough in 3, 4, and 5. And obviously, in the eyes of the judges, it was close, too. It just went Aljo's way.
But it was such a wildly different result from 1 to 2.
Yeah.
That, in my mind, that proves that Aljo has stepped up. He knows what he has to do against Petr. So who's to say he doesn't win in UD this next time?
But on the
I haven't seen a whole lot of evolution from Petr.
But on the flip side of that, I think Petr went in a little overconfident in that Aljo fight because of what he did in the first time. And I think the way that Aljo took his back in their second fight, I think Petr will work on, kind of developing his ground game, getting himself out of those kinds of situations. And it's clear that he's, on the feet, Yan is leaps and bounds above Sterling.
Oh, yeah. By miles.
So I think as long as he can do a little bit to just kind of get himself out of jams on the ground, I think he'll beat Aljo in the next fight. I think he's the best fighter in bantamweight. But segueing into Aljo's bantamweight championship fight against TJ, the CEO of EPO, Dillashaw.
Calm down over there, Covington.
But, God, this is a fight that I really don't want to see either guy win.
Yeah, this is an ultimate. Just which one do you dislike less?
It's not even the one I dislike less, to be honest. The one I dislike more out of the two is the one that I'm picking to win, to be honest. Yeah.
Huh. I've got Aljo.
Yeah. And I have TJ, and partially because I saw a picture of him on Twitter. Dude looks jacked.
Yeah, he's back on EPO.
And I totally...
For the sinus infection or whatever it was he said it was.
I totally think that dude is back on the juice. Probably. But he also is a 2-time bantamweight champ. He's never actually lost his belt.
No.
Either time. He has 5 title fights under his belt and more 5-round experience than Sterling does too. And I think Dillashaw has the ability on the ground to get out of issues that Sterling presents to him. And his only loss in the last 8 years in the bantamweight division was to who I think is the bantamweight GOAT, Dominic Cruz.
Well, he also lost to Sandhagen in his last fight. I know that it doesn't show it, but he did lose that fight to Sandhagen. People really wanted him to be good.
That one was questionable.
Sandy won that fight.
I don't know about that. I think it was close. I honestly won't pick a winner from that fight. That fight just kind of happened.
I will. It's Sandhagen. I'll be the first to say it. It was Sandhagen. And to do a little fight math, which we all know how well that works out.
Yeah.
Aljo immediately got out there and took Sandhagen's back, and it was over before it even started. I think that there's a different level of Aljamain Sterling. I'm kind of worried that it's going to become like Israel Adesanya, where he stops being entertaining to win on points.
Yeah.
Which, I couldn't blame him for. I'd want the extra rubies. I'd want the purse. But all I see here is that he's going to get him on the ground. I do think his ground game is notably better than TJ's.
Yeah.
I think that he's talented enough in that regard to keep him, and then maybe we get like a 4th-round submission when he wears him out.
The thing is, though, I think TJ has way better cardio than Sterling does. And if you look back to the Sterling-Yan fight, Sterling kind of gassed out in those last 3 rounds.
A little bit.
And I think TJ, with the aid of the EPO and the 5-round experience, has better endurance than Sterling. I honestly could see a similar play out in this fight as to Sterling's last fight against Yan, where the first 2 rounds he kind of has his way on the ground, but then 3, 4, 5, Dillashaw comes alive, starts landing some damaging strikes, and ultimately wins, whether by knockout or by decision.
This is a little off topic, but isn't Cheeto the backup for this fight? I feel like I remember seeing that somewhere. Can I predict that TJ pisses hot before the fight and that Cheeto wins the fight, comes in and wins? Because if I can, that's what I'm going to do. But I'll look that up. But if that is the case, I would love to see that happen. Or maybe what they do is they make Jan the backup, put Cheeto versus Sean together.
Yeah. A little rematch.
Yeah, and then Jan would, I don't know. But we're
getting into hypotheticals here.
Yes.
But, yeah, and listen, I don't want to discredit what Sterling has done. He's an absolute menace on the ground. And, whether I think he actually won the Jan fight or not, he did. The judges gave it to him. He's a champion for a reason. He rebounded after the illegal knee. But I think Dillashaw has just fought the higher level fighters over the course of his career and has more experience to be able to kind of weather the storm that Sterling is going to give him grappling-wise initially and be able to pull it out.
I can't find if he's the backup or not. I did find out that he called out Cejudo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Henry Cejudo is just, he calls out everyone under the sun.
No, Cheeto called him out.
Oh, Cheeto called him out?
Yeah.
Okay.
He said that he should get the next title fight, but that Cejudo can get it. So I don't know if that's in the sense of he's trying to find him on Tinder or if that's trying to find him in the octagon. But in one way or the other, he's got his sights set on him. But yeah, it's not an I don't care who wins this one. It's I'm fine seeing either one of these guys get submitted or knocked out.
Yeah.
Because I find both pretty obnoxious.
Yeah. Both of these guys suck.
I dislike TJ more. Yeah.
Like, because he's a cheater. Aljo is just like an annoying personality.
Right. Yeah. He just kind of sucks a little bit. And like the whole, after he catches the knee and does whatever, and then 2 hours later he's on Instagram popping bottles. Like, something about that just never really sat right with me. 2 guys, though, that I do think, while you love or hate their personalities, I don't really think Islam has a personality to hate, but most people love Charles's. This fight will be electric. This fight,
God,
since Charles has gotten his hands on the belt and really proven after that Michael Chandler fight that he is for real and he's going to hang around, I think this was kind of the dream booking that everybody was making.
Yeah, dude, and listen, I have been on the Islam Makhachev hype train for years. You could consider me the conductor of the Islam Makhachev hype train. But as much as I love Islam, I've doubted Charles Oliveira too many times to doubt him again.
I have a counterpoint.
Okay.
You're betting against a guy who's going to have both Khabib Nurmagomedov and Hasbulla in his corner. Think about what you're doing right now. Just consider that for a second. You're betting against him having 2 of the greatest, not only fighters, but people in his corner.
Dude, making this pick hurts me because I love Islam's game, and I do think that before it's all said and done, he will be champion. Yeah. I just don't think it's going to come on Saturday night, and there's a couple reasons for that, and I think a lot of it is actually mental for Charles Oliveira. Everyone knows he never should have gotten his belt taken away.
No,
he missed by 0.2 pounds, 0.5 pounds. That is so inconsequential. I just think he's pissed off about that and is there to claim what's rightfully his. And also, there have been a lot of chirps from Makhachev's team, mostly Khabib, to be honest. But I think Charles Oliveira feels super disrespected by his opponent.
If Islam loses this fight, does Khabib come out of retirement to fight Charles?
I would love.
This feels like one of those types of opponents that I could see it,
where you take out Khabib's protege,
right? And so he's like, okay, I'll just come in
comes
here.
To step in,
yeah, and then he submits Charles in round 2.
Yeah,
I could see it, but also he's like a light heavy anymore. Watching Khabib stop around.
Thick now, bro.
Brother is like 5'9" and 300 pounds. Dude really filled out. But yeah, my whole thing is, and it's weird because it sounds stupid, because Charles is the leading UFC fighter in career submissions.
Right.
But he's not winning the edge on the ground here. Islam's got the edge on the ground.
Yeah, but the thing is, Charles does, like, all of Charles' submissions come off of fighting on his back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's great at that. But also, are you willing to bet that he's even going to get that window against a Dagestani fighter? A guy who is being trained by a man who only ever lost one round of his UFC career.
But Islam isn't Khabib.
He's not. He's nowhere near the level Khabib was. But he is getting closer to it.
He is, and that's why I say that I believe that he will ultimately be champion.
I think 70% of Khabib beats just about anybody on the roster today.
Yeah, but
I think Islam is roughly equivalent to 70% of Khabib.
Well, I don't know. What I do know, though, is that ever since Charles moved back up to lightweight, he is 12-1. He's on an 11-fight win streak, and he's fought higher level. He's fought all the best guys in the division, and Islam hasn't. Islam's fought Bobby Green and Dan Hooker and like.
But I would agree if he was out here doing like it was some super sophisticated style of fighting where it's like his combos and his whatevers, and he's not going up against people with good strike defense. But it does not matter who he's fighting in his style, because it's just get you to the ground and make you as depleted and tired as you can possibly be. It doesn't matter if it's Bobby Green or if it's Conor McGregor or if it's Justin Gaethje. You know, you're getting on top of these people and just zapping them of their energy. That's kind of translatable.
That is, but Charles, when you think that Charles is out of the fight, he comes back up and does something spectacular. And I think, and that's the fact that Charles has like a granite chin now after kind of being labeled, this quitter, kind of gives up on fights. That was granted at featherweight, but Charles has taken some mean shots. Mean shots. And like pops right back up and then goes and submits him. But I actually think that Charles, his easier path to victory would be on the feet.
Yes, it is. By a pretty wide margin.
Yeah.
I'm not in love with Islam Makhachev's hands by any means. But I would also like to point out this is great for the Charles Oliveira people that are going to be betting on him, because I have bet that Michael Chandler was going to beat him. I bet that Justin Gaethje was going to beat him. I bet that Dustin Poirier was going to beat him. I told myself I was done doing this because I thought Islam was another fight or two away. I'm not betting against Islam Makhachev. Anybody else in this fight versus Charles, I'm betting Charles. But the lineage and the who's training him and what we see him do stylistically, I think Islam wins decision.
And I'm just on the other side of that because I'm also someone who has doubted Charles. I did think he was going to beat Gaethje, but thought Chandler was going to beat him. Thought Poirier was going to beat him. I even thought Tony Ferguson was going to beat him.
Oh, I didn't.
Like, I've just learned. I just feel like I've learned my lesson to not bet against Charles Oliveira, even when it seems like he's out of the fight. He's not, and he does something spectacular. But what I do know is that regardless of who wins, this one's going to be a finish. This one is destined for a finish, dude. These guys are both... Charles has the UFC record for most finishes, and Islam can just submit you in 10 seconds. Especially that it's 5 rounds. I think this one's going to a finish. I'm not betting on that because it's a super heavy line.
Double dip.
No, I'm not double dipping. I'm just straight up Charles Oliveira money line. He's the underdog. This is another case of where it's just a close fight. I would rather, I do think this is the closest fight on the card.
By far. And in that situation, I would, again, just rather put my money on the person that's going to win me more. That's fair enough. All right. Well, that sets up the entirety of this upcoming pay-per-view card. If you liked what you heard, subscribe or follow or whatever it is on whatever service you're listening to this to. If we get this up on YouTube, leave a comment on your own predictions or how good or bad we were. That's really up to you. But do you have anything you want to plug?
Not really. I'm just We'll be back next week. We'll have reactions from this fight night. It's gonna be. I mean, we're gonna be absolutely like.
We'll probably spend more time
minds.
talking about this card than we will a fight night, which is sad. But I am going to go ahead and plug. If you're a college football fan and you somehow found your way here, I do a college football podcast. I'll leave the link in the description for these videos. Plus, it is from my prospective, PROSPECTIVE. I know. I'm a very smart guy. You guys will come to learn that. But, all right. Anything else you want to say?
Come to learn that.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say?
No, that's all I got. I'm super excited for this card. It starts early, so wake up, make some breakfast.
Abu Dhabi.
Thank you for making this not until 1